Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this meeting of the California Commission on the State of Hate. This is the second meeting of this calendar year 2024. Just a couple of reminders as we call this meeting to order at 9:01 a.m. Closed captioning is available for this meeting. I'm Russell Roybal, chair of the commission. Closed captioning is available for this meeting. The closed captions can be displayed in English or another language, which will allow you to view an automated live transcript of the meeting in another language, including Spanish, Chinese, Korean, and Vietnamese. To display closed captions on your screen, please do the following. Click the button labeled Show Captions at the bottom of your Zoom window. If you'd like to display captions in another language, select the box at the bottom of the window labeled Enable Translation. You will see a window with the heading You've enabled translation at the top. Select English as the speaking language and select your preferred language in the second menu. Then click Save. Automated captions in your selected language should start appearing at the bottom of the Zoom window. We'll send instructions in Spanish in the chat. Now let's establish a quorum for our meeting today. Deputy Director Watts, will you please call the roll?
Sure. Chair Roybal.
Present.
Vice Chair Salcedo. Commissioner Che.
Present.
Commissioner Cuellar. Commissioner Damsky. Commissioner Filer.
Present.
Commissioner Levin.
Present. Thank you.
Commissioner Sinar.
Present.
Commissioner Suthers.
Present.
Okay, we have a quorum.
Thank you, Deputy Director Watts. You may view the agenda by visiting the, we have quorum. You may view the agenda by visiting the Commission's website, calcivilrights.ca.gov/Commission on the State of Hate, or enter into any search engine, California Commission on the State of Hate, and click on the button labeled Meetings and Agendas on that page. We'll send the link in the chat. There are going to be a couple of reviews, some changes to the agenda today. We have some folks that have limited time today, so we're going to be making a couple of things, move some things around. So I'm going to say this right now, but this is subject to change pending when folks are able to join us. We're planning on moving agenda items 5 and 6 up before agenda item 2, approval of the minutes, although we may go to the approval of the minutes if Commissioner Damsky doesn't join us by then. And then we're going to skip agenda item 4, which is about the commission's report. We will have more to say and to be able to review that at the next commission meeting, as it is not yet ready for the commissioners to take up. I'd like now to review the process for public comment. First, this commission is a public body, and an important part of being a public body is hearing from the public. To that end, this meeting is open to the public, and there will be opportunities for public comments throughout the meeting today. To keep an orderly meeting, please make sure to comment only on the agenda item under consideration. If you have comments that are not specifically related to an agenda item, please save your comment for the agenda item titled Public Comment on Items Not on the Agenda. To submit a written public comment, you may email the commission at csh@calcivilrights.ca.gov. We'll also put that email address in the chat. We'll be monitoring this channel throughout the meeting. If you submit a written public comment that pertains to an agenda item, we will read it aloud or summarize it when the public comment portion of that agenda item is open and before any vote. If the comment is not about a specific agenda item, we will read it aloud or summarize it at the end of the meeting during the agenda item titled Public Comment on Items Not on the Agenda. If you would like to speak at the meeting to deliver your public comment, you will have the opportunity to do so during the public comment portions of the meeting. You may request to speak on an agenda item by raising your hand on Zoom. If you are joining on a computer, you can raise your hand by pressing the raise hand button on the bottom of your screen. If you are on the phone, you can raise your hand by pressing *9. During the public comment portion, we will call on attendees who raise their hands to allow them to unmute and to deliver comments. For anyone joining us in the room in Los Angeles today, you may submit a written comment by emailing us or by writing your comment on a piece of paper and handing it to Shanna Hart, our staff member who is in the room in Los Angeles today. To deliver a verbal comment, please raise your hand and we will unmute the room. In the interest of time, we will limit verbal public comments to 3 minutes per person, and you will get a 30-second warning as your time is about to expire. Since Commissioner Adamski has not yet joined us, why don't we move to agenda item number 6? Actually, let's move to agenda item number 2 on the agenda, which is the approval of the minutes, and then we will come back to the chair's report. So we'll now move on to approval of the minutes from the last commission meeting. We'll then vote on the minutes from the last community forum. The minutes from the last meeting are attachment A. We'll post the link in the chat. Oh, we already did the forum. We're not doing the forum again, right? So we're going to do the approval of the minutes from the last commission meeting. The minutes from the last meeting are attachment A. We'll also post the link to in the chat to the minutes. I will open it up to the commissioners to see if there are any comments or edits to the minutes from our last meeting in January. See none. Is there any public comment on the minutes from the last meeting? See no public comments. I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes from the January commission meeting.
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Filer. Is there a second? Seconded by Commissioner Che. Any further discussion from the commissioners on the minutes? All right, let's move to a vote. Alec, will you call the roll?
Sure. Chair Roybal,
Aye.
Vice Chair Salcedo, Commissioner Che,
Aye.
Commissioner Cuellar, Commissioner Adamski, Commissioner Filer,
Aye.
Commissioner Levin,
Aye.
Commissioner Sinar,
Aye.
Commissioner Suthers.
Aye.
That's 6 ayes. Yeah, 6 ayes.
The motion passes. The minutes are approved. Let's go back to the chair's report. I'd like to start today as we're waiting for other commissioners to join us. Just to start my update by wishing everyone a very happy Black History Month and happy Lunar New Year. We'd also like to remind everyone that if you are a victim of a hate crime or incident, you can contact the California versus Hate resource line to report the incident and be connected with resources. We will send that link in the chat. Again, that is cavshate.org. I'd also like to take a moment to reflect on a couple of moments of celebration for our fellow commissioners and congratulate Commissioner Suthers for being the recipient of the Los Angeles Police Department's Jack Webb Award. Congratulations, Commissioner Suthers. I'd also like to congratulate Vice Chair Salcedo, who I think will be joining us shortly for celebrating her organization, Trans Latinas Quinceañera. Quinceañera in the Latinx, Latino community celebrates 15 years. So congratulations to Vice Chair Salcedo and our colleagues at the Trans Latina organization for celebrating their quinceañera. As a reminder, we have scheduled the March meeting to take place on Wednesday, March 20th, which is 1 week earlier than our usual meeting time. So all the commissioners should have received an updated calendar invite for that meeting. Let's continue in the subcommittee reports. And let's go ahead and start with the subcommittee on data and research. Commissioner Sinar.
Hi, everyone. Good to see everybody. So just a couple of updates. Most of our, we've got a couple of contracts that we've spoken about kind of at length in the past, so I won't kind of return to those. But some of the new areas that we are exploring are to look at research on both the prevalence of online hate and potential intervention approaches to reducing the presence or posting of hate messages. So that's one area that we're looking at because our prior kind of research that we've focused on funding hasn't yet kind of explored the online dimensions of hate. So that's one area we're looking at, and hopefully we'll be getting a literature review in. A second area that we are looking into is also reviewing existing literature on hate crime sentencing enhancements, including what we know and don't know about the effectiveness of enhancements just kind of across the board, and in particular in the hate crime context, and also related questions about sentence length and how it affects other values that communities are concerned about. So that's a second area that we are kind of continuing to explore. We are just about completing one of the research contracts that we had in place previously, and that's a contract with Naya Hardaway, who is a sociology and law student who helped us synthesize some of the literature on prejudice reduction interventions, especially related to public messaging campaigns. So how do we, and that effort some of her work will be shared in the annual report and will help us think as a commission about how we communicate around hate crimes, around incidents, around getting the message out about prevention and outreach. Then we've been exploring other contracts, and the staff, as always, has been leading this effort in speaking with a number of other researchers. So Rebecca Goodsell and Alec Watts in particular have spoken with other researchers on everything from restorative justice to educational interventions, and we're continuing to move forward on research in some of those areas. So I think that's the main highlights. Welcome any questions.
Thank you, Commissioner Sinar. Are there questions for the subcommittee on data and research? I actually have a question, Commissioner Sinar, on the, can you talk a little bit more about the penalty enhancements? And I know we have talked about this before and how often penalty enhancements disproportionately affect Black and Brown offenders. Can you just say a little bit more about what we're trying to get at and a little bit more about that particular project?
Sure. So yeah, there's a lot of actually new research, including at a California specific level, on the impact of a whole range of sentencing enhancements. So kind of thinking about some of the most important ones in California, gun-related enhancements and gang-related enhancements and other enhancements actually account for a much bigger share. And there's been new research in those areas in general. We know very little actually about the impacts of hate crime enhancements. So in part because they're, and this is something Commissioner Levins pointed out before, they're actually not used all that often. And so there's not been a lot of data or evidence on almost any question related to their effectiveness. So do hate crimes enhancements actually deter further hate crimes? What other impacts do they have or not have? And so right now, there's not much evidence that they are actually effective in deterrence, but there's also not been a lot of research into that or into even the broader questions of, is there a relationship? What is the relationship between the length of a sentence and other kinds of objectives or goals that people may have with them. And at the same time, as you mentioned, Chair Roybal, there's concern about disproportionate effects of enhancements and sort of who ends up actually getting charged with them, including in the hate crime context, where there's some evidence suggesting that a lot of hate crime enhancements are actually used, with respect to offenders of color, much more so than we would maybe imagine that they would be used. So I think with all of those concerns and questions, the idea behind this research is let's get a handle on what we actually know, because we're often asked to comment on this issue. It affects legislative recommendations. The predominant approach in many states for the last many decades has been to impose new enhancements, and we still occasionally have legislative proposals to do that. So the idea is let's get a survey on what we actually know and where the gaps are in our understanding.
Exciting. Thank you, Commissioner Sar. Commissioner Sinar. Commissioner Chang.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Sinar, for your report, and I'm very interested in the lit review and the research that you're conducting, your subcommittee. I would just also like to echo that I do find that in our line of work, it's interesting that we are pursuing strategies that we actually have no idea if it works. And so as a body that's interested in being evidence-based and data-driven, I think this is really an important inquiry. My question is just more broader, which is, excuse me, will there, at the conclusion of your lit review and research, will there be a presentation of your findings? Because I'm very interested in the public messaging lit review as well as your other inquiries.
Right. So some of this research will feed into the annual report and recommendations. So I think actually with respect to the public messaging, that's a good example where, not to get too ahead of us, since none of us, the discussion about the annual report will happen in subsequent meetings. But my understanding is that part of the report will address some of the findings from that synthesis.
Thank you, Commissioner Che. Commissioner Levin.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. I do want to caution, though, because of the tenor of the discussion. I don't think any of us were expecting to get questioned on it. But there are a couple of statements that are not wholly accurate. We do not have a lot of data with respect to hate crime enhancements and hate crimes overall. But we do have research that shows when Boston started a hate crime unit and Massachusetts passed a modern hate crime law, the Massachusetts Civil Rights Act of 1979, Wexler and Marks, hate crimes in Boston were cut by 2/3. The head of the hate crime unit, who was there for decades, told me he had not seen a recidivist. Penalty enhancements in general are used much more frequently by the thousands and thousands, and they much more relate to these kind of elastic situational things like guns and gangs, as opposed to the multiplicity of offenders. And since we just had a notable hate monger get released from federal custody, I think we have to be very careful before we take very legitimate criticisms of sentence enhancements that are used for drugs or gangs, which are expanded to virtually anything. If you have friends, we've seen this. But with respect to different kinds of hate mongers, and Dr. Suthers was in Life After Hate. The jury is still out, but we have so few use of them. What I would like us to do before we do any public presentation is to get data from our district attorneys and say, what kind of recidivism have we had? When we only had 3 felonies in January 2020 in the pipeline, one was a neo-Nazi with a shovel attacking a Black couple, and 2 were throat slitting of transgender people in Los Angeles. That's something that I think is perhaps worthy of penalties. But there is a difference in offenders that are prosecuted for hate crime, which is very few, their demographics, and criminal and criminal offenses generally. And when we try to lump hate crimes with all offenses, we get into trouble. Just like when Commissioner Che last year in DC with me was with some very important conservative commentator who said hate crimes always follow crimes in general. Well, guess what? They don't. They're up this year. So we really have to be careful not to conflate the very reasonable and proper understanding about sentence enhancements in general versus sentence enhancements, which are rarely used. Texas, they've used it 36 times since 2001. So it's very sparsely used compared to the ubiquity of enhancements that I think there is a very plausible argument that is disproportionately affecting communities of color and others. But yes, let's get the data, but not conflate it.
Thank you, Commissioner Levin. Commissioner Sinar, do you want to? This is your report. Do you want to respond to that, or do you just want to be in the queue?
I can stay in the queue and let our
Okay.
colleagues weigh in first.
Great. Commissioner Filer.
I'm sorry to be naive. Could you define better for me what the enhancements means, like what that would look like?
Should I jump in to respond to that?
Sure,
Thanks.
please, Commissioner Sinar.
Right, so sentence enhancement is generally in addition to a sentence that someone would receive because, like in the hate crimes context, because they not only committed, say, an assault, but they committed it with an intent to target a particular identity group. So, for example, in California, maybe you're sentenced to assault and your sentence, let's say, ordinarily might have been 3 years, then you might get an addition of a year or more based on it being, if the prosecution can prove that the motive was based on targeting of a particular identity group. So that's basically what a hate crime sentence enhancement is. And there are enhancements, what Commissioner Levin was referring to, in other contexts. So for example, in California, if somebody's committed, is convicted of a crime and then is also found to have been participating in a gang or use of a firearm in particular contexts, those are also examples of where the sentence is increased beyond the baseline sentence for that crime based on those special factors.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you, Commissioner Sinar. Commissioner Salcedo, and then we'll go back to Commissioner Sar to wrap up this report. Commissioner Salcedo.
Yes, thank you so much. And again, apologies for my inability to be here right at 9 o'clock when I was supposed to. So I thank you so much, Commissioner Sinar, for your work on this. This is super important. I remember sometime, well, actually when DA Gascon first started here in Los Angeles, right? Many of us in the community really think that, the solution not necessarily is, jail people or cage people, right? And so I remember when DA Gascon sort of like was trying to not put so many enhancements on people for different things, right? And there was a backlash from community, right? And so, I mean, he's obviously doing whatever he can with that situation, but I really appreciate your approach about, just trying to survey people and see like where people are and try to like really listen to the people in terms of like, what do we think is best, right? I think it's important for us to recognize and really be reminded that hate starts at home, right? And, and so like, how do we also think of alternatives, right? Of shifting minds and hearts and really making sure that, we don't like basically that we continue to see our humanity, right? And really make sure that, I guess we find ways to I guess treat also people as people, right? Despite the craziness that happens and the things that people do, to portray hate against all of us. And so thank you. I just wanted to say thank you and for us to really consider yeah, just different ways, like just thinking of multiple approaches, right? Because you know, a cookie cutter thing is not necessarily going to work. But rather how we continue to be innovative and how we continue to be human centered, if you will. So I just wanted to express my appreciation.
Thank you, Vice Chair Salcedo. Commissioner Sinar, can you finish up this report, respond to anything you want to respond to? Then Commissioner Levin, we'll come back to you because we have Commissioner Dansky for limited time, and I want to make sure we get to the law enforcement report and training. Commissioner Sinar, can you wrap us up?
Yeah, thank you. I wanted to appreciate the comments and think these are among the most complicated issues that our commission faces, right? Like what kinds of criminal justice responses do we want and not want? And, you know, in line with, I think, the complicated views that our communities are expressing to us, including both a lot of distrust with criminal justice system, with policing and prisons and the traditional approaches, but also within certain communities, a sense that historically they've been underprotected and, you know, their safety is at risk. So they're very complicated views on this. And I think part of the reason that we want to get this evidence base is that so that we are relying on something, you know, on a base of knowledge that can then at least inform the really complicated conversations that I think we'll continue to have. I also just want to quickly point out that actually most of the research and data that that our subcommittee is looking at relates to non-law enforcement interventions. So thinking about kind of the full set of areas we're exploring, you know, we're exploring online messaging interventions, we're exploring restorative justice, we're exploring educational interventions. So a lot of the you know, other forms of public communications messaging, which, you know, I just mentioned a moment ago. So essentially, most of our contracts are very intentionally designed to look at all of these other measures that communities have been asking for which we also don't have very much evidence, but we want to develop those. And at the same time, it seems important that at least when we are deciding on legislation or even our own recommendations on criminal justice responses, that we have something to inform what we say or do. So I think the last thing that I just wanted to say, and kind of on a point that Professor and Commissioner Levin made, is that I actually don't think that the research is really all that definitive. And, you know, the study that Professor Levin noted is, you know, one particular study, not actually about sentencing enhancements, but about the formation of specialized police units to respond to hate crimes, which is a different question and for which there is some evidence that suggests that if you're going to have police responses, then having specialized police units that have expertise in hate crimes, there's some research to suggest that that is actually a more useful approach. So, you know, my comment previously was not really intended to address all the research that we know about policing and hate crimes. It's, I think, a complicated field, but I just want to point out that on hate crime enhancements in particular and their effectiveness, there's very little that we know by way of academic research.
Thank you, Commissioner Sinar, and thanks to the subcommittee on that report. We're going to move now to back to agenda item number 5 on your agendas, which is discussion of the content of law enforcement training. That was an attachment for this meeting. And so I want to welcome Commissioner Dansky and turn it over to Commissioner Dansky and Commissioner Suthers for this discussion.
Good morning. I just want to say thank you, Chair, and good morning to everyone. Sorry for joining you late and for a brief time. I'm at a conference for my water district, and Commissioner Suthers will lead this portion of our discussion.
Morning, and I believe I'm just going to actually give our subcommittee report first, correct? Okay, great. So good morning, everyone. Thank you. I want to thank Chair Roybal for very kind remarks about the award this week and my other fellow commissioners who've had some other similar events over the past month. It's good to see you all I'll be very brief because I know that Commissioner Damski's time is limited, so I'm going to walk through our meetings that we had on February 1st, 9th, and 15th of this month. And with that, I want to really thank Director Watts, Ms. Chavez, Ms. Goodsell, because they've been doing fantastic work. We've had some very productive meetings. With that, on the 1st of February, we had a very good conversation led by Ms. Goodsell regarding law enforcement, the fact that they've received information about hate, but they still really don't know what to do. We've been trying to direct law enforcement agencies to California versus Hate because they can help them. AB 449 is still, as you all know, a little bit unclear, but we're trying to clarify that. But as you also all know, that the policy has to be fully adopted by July 1st. So we're working on that, and departments do have to quote, train on the policy. Commissioner Damski is going to be talking about the content for our upcoming post-training in Carlsbad, so I won't go into that, but we discussed that at every meeting this month. We had a very interesting discussion on communities not being overlooked, particularly the sick community, the disabled community, those who have language challenges, and the elder community, which are areas that we might consider exploring a little bit deeper as we go further. And then we also, in that meeting on the 1st of February, talked about California versus Hate, working on outreach materials for the indigenous community. Moving on to the 9th of February, we had a very good presentation by an LAPD detective who is in one of those specialized units. As Commissioner Sonar mentioned, they do have one of those at the Los Angeles Police Department. A detective named Orlando Martinez, he's going to be at our training this month. He was very, very candid about officer issues as it relates to hate crime investigations, hate crime arrests. As you probably know, the Los Angeles Police Department is taking hate crime incident reports. He was very forthcoming. We discussed anti-disability hate crimes in that meeting on the 9th and really got into the meat of what that means, which is that their disability is the reason they were targeted in that incident. And we also discussed potential invitees, which Commissioner Damski will outline for our post-training that's going to take place at the end of the month. And then last but not least, our meeting on the 15th of this month, very briefly, that meeting was all consuming on our upcoming post-training in Carlsbad, which we're really looking forward to, an agenda, a final confirmation list. And with that, if there are no questions, I'm going to go ahead and defer to Commissioner Damski to give you the details of that agenda that we plan to have this at the end of this month. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Suthers. Commissioner Damski.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for the introduction and to our topic here. So we will start meeting with POST next week on Wednesday. POST stands for Peace Officer Standards and Training. It's a state commission, and just like ours is, and they are involved with educating law enforcement officers about trainings that that they need to have. So next week, from Wednesday, starting Wednesday afternoon, going into Friday afternoon, we will be meeting with POST to put together the outline of what it is and perhaps a script of what we want to be filming in the video at the end of April, 1st of May. We will bring the contents of that first meeting to this commission at our next meeting for everyone to see and review. And I'm looking for, here we go. So the outline of the potential content for the video we've shared with you before, but I'll review it. We have a few sections. The first is talking about Assembly Bill 449 for 5 to 7 minutes to talk about what are the applications of this law for law enforcement agencies, what was the intention or the motivation that led to its creation, where is the new form that officers will need to fill out where there's a hate crime or incident, and what is in that form. So where is it and what is in it, and how is that different from what they currently have to report? Second section will talk about the basics of hate crimes, looking at defining them, how can they be identified, why do they matter, how do we differentiate between hate crimes and hate incidents, the importance of collecting data, and what to ask when collecting evidence of hate. For instance, what was said, what was done, what kinds of particulars might indicate that there was a hate motivation in this event. Third section would be responding to acts of hate that are not crimes and why capturing hate incidents matters, how that is important to our communities and for future of law enforcement, perhaps capturing subjects who instigate these incidents who may later accelerate or perhaps participate in more events that could lead to a later arrest. Fourth section, looking at effective engagement with communities targeted for hate before and after hate incidents, what to say and not to say following a hate crime, developing relationships outside of crisis situations to establish trust and relationships for in the event that hate incidents and crimes do happen. And then the last section, the importance of sharing resources for people who have been targeted with hate crimes or incidents. For example, our hotline, California versus Hate. In California, this is required by law enforcement who are responding to hate crimes per Penal Code Section 422.92, and then to emphasize why it's important for both victims to report and for police to investigate. So one of the things that we have, as we've been moving forward since our last meeting, learned is that not all of Assembly Bill 449 has been enacted as of January 1st, even though it's law as of January 1st, parts of it are still awaiting funding. And that await is depending on our final budget negotiations with the governor. So when Commissioner Suthers was talking about how some parts of the bill are not quite clear, that's what he was referring to. Even though we have requirements that are scheduled to go into effect July 1st, we don't know if in fact all of those things will be funded by July 1st. So that's something that we're hoping will be clarified as we move through the process of creating this training video. And one of the things we discussed is it may be necessary to do a second follow-up video later when all of the funding is in place. So that's my summary. And if Commissioner Suthers doesn't have anything else to add, I suppose we can move forward with comments and questions.
I have nothing to add. Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you. Commissioner Suthers, when you speak, it's sometimes a little hard to hear you, just an FYI. Let's go ahead and move to questions or comments. Commissioner Che.
Good morning.
Oh, good morning. Thank you, Chair Roybal. I want to just first by thanking Commissioners Suthers and Damsky for your great work. I really appreciate the summary. As an organization that has advocated for responding to not just hate crimes, but to incidents, this really is a good step in the right direction. Just want to echo that. The reason being is that we need to treat all incidents seriously and refrain from using terms like rise to the level of hate crimes, because it does tend to diminish, I think, the experiences of those who've encountered this type of hate, because we know that it is traumatic and can be devastating. And I think the other aspect of it is that we do know without proper interventions, situations can escalate. As we know, there is a lot of conflict in our communities between neighbors, in the workplace. And so without tracking and understanding and responding, like through California versus Hate, we could potentially see matters worsen. And then I think finally, what we know from our experience is that when we have law enforcement departments who have special units, I think the ones like Commissioner Sinar had raised, like in San Francisco, they had dedicated police officers who spoke in multiple languages, which is very key in being able to understand and to be able to listen to those who are being harmed, and to be able to do it in the language that they are most comfortable in. And I think this idea that there is no wrong door, everybody knows to call 911. So the first point of contact for law enforcement, they do need to be well versed in other resources like California versus Hate. So just want to applaud and just echo your questions and your training, and multiple trainings are really vital. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Che. Commissioner Sinar.
Yes, I wanted to also just reiterate the thanks to Commissioners Dembski and Suthers for all the work that you're doing on this training. And specifically, the content to me, it seemed like it's really valuable that the content includes things like everything from how do police gather the evidence to be able to show that there is a bias motive in a particular case. From that angle to trust building with communities and being aware of and spreading the message about non-law enforcement resources available to communities, all of that seems really significant. So actually, I didn't have questions so much on the content of the training, but I had a few questions thinking about the overall kind of how this training will be used and evaluated going forward. And part of my thoughts come from having just recently read a report by another state government commission. And actually, I'll try to put it in the chat in case it's useful. I think this is the correct link, but somebody can check me on that. But essentially, it's by a commission called the Little Hoover Commission, which is kind of an odd name, but it's an independent California government oversight commission. It's been there since the 1960s, set up to evaluate the efficiency and effectiveness of state programs. And after the George Floyd racial justice protests in 2020, the commission was asked to review all of California training for law enforcement officers, and then it issued a report in 2021. And the bottom line conclusion of the report was that the state of California spends millions of dollars in training programs each year through POST, but almost never evaluates the effectiveness of those trainings in changing officer behavior on the ground. So we don't really know very much about what works with respect to trainings. And their recommendation was that POST basically we conduct a top to bottom review of everything from the basic academy training at the 40 plus academies, training police in California early, before they become officers, to later stage training in officer careers. And they suggested that a lot of this training falls short, or at least the effectiveness is unknown. And they didn't mince words in referring to the effect of not having this information, and suggested that if you don't have more rigorous evaluation, then training for law enforcement officers could end up either not working or potentially eroding community trust. And this was not with respect to hate crimes in particular, it was just with reference to training in general. So I guess with that kind of cautionary note in mind, I had a few separate questions, but one being just, what steps can we take as a commission to evaluate this training and then other trainings going forward? So how can we get more traction on the impact of these trainings on officer behavior? And I think that's actually a very hard thing, but I'd love to hear sort of your initial thinking on how to go about doing that. A second question is, will the video itself be made public so that community organizations more broadly, and I recognize that there's some that are participating in the Carlsbad creation of the training, but for the much wider swath of community organizations, will they be able to view it? And it seems like there's a relationship between that transparency and community trust in terms of, especially because it does involve the law enforcement piece. And then finally, what will we be able to know about who is actually viewing the videos? And are there things at the front end that Post can do to be able to track viewership? So for instance, you know, I'm getting these numbers from the same report that I referenced, but 87,000 full-time officers in California, 700 agencies, and apparently some, 4,600 training courses available through the Post online training mechanism already. So there are a lot of trainings that are out there, but who's actually watching them? How do we get traction on that? And is there something kind of technologically that at the front end Post can do so that when this training is viewed by either individual officers through their online portal or just shown by police agencies at their roll call, which I think is the context the commissioners have previously mentioned, how will we know who's actually seeing it and whether it's actually getting viewed out there among law enforcement?
Thank you, Commissioner Sinar. Commissioner Suthers or Damsky, do you want to respond to those questions?
I'll say a little bit, and I think Commissioner Suthers may have a little more experience with Post than I do, so he might be able to offer some more specifics. Those are really great questions, Commissioner Sinar. I really appreciate you bringing those to us. Let's see. How to evaluate the effectiveness of this training moving forward. I'm really glad that you mentioned the Little Hoover Commission report. I'll take a look at that. It's something I've heard about, but had not been aware of recently. So I think that's an important piece you brought to us. I don't know how Post evaluates the effectiveness of its trainings in the field. Perhaps Commissioner Suthers can handle that question. We have not spoken with them about what steps we as a commission can take to evaluate the effectiveness of this training on officer behavior. I think that's also a great question we could ask with our contact at Post. I don't expect that this video will be made public, but I really like the idea of having some of our community stakeholders who will not participate in putting the training script together. I really like the idea of having their eyes on it, to have a look at it. We will have a number of community representatives with us doing that work. I suppose that's a question we can bring back to our subcommittee, and also talk with the people at Post whether or not we can make this available, because I'm not sure to what extent it's proprietary to them. And I do believe that Post will have a record of who will see the trainings. Primarily, AB 449 requires all law enforcement individuals and all law enforcement agencies to have this training and to create a training for their own officers in the field. So there will be some record of that, but I don't know that that would be available to this commission. To that extent, I will hand the rest of these answers over to Commissioner Suthers, who might have a little more detail.
Thank you, Commissioner Damsky. And I just want to ask the chair, is my volume better? Up a little bit more? Okay, I've never had this problem and I'm on Zoom.
Yeah, you have never had a problem, but am I the only one that's not hearing? Like, he sounds a little far away.
His volume's low.
Yeah.
Yeah, he does.
Okay, I'll yell. I'm on Zoom about 12 hours a day and it's never come up. So anyway, so I'll just go back through again, very good questions, Commissioner Sinar, and without sounding redundant, what we know about who's viewing. The life of an officer is either in the field, on a day off, or in training. So everything an officer does, as you probably know, Commissioner Sinar, is regulated by Post. They have recurring training, especially for uses of force issues, chemical agents, baton, weapons. So that's tracked extensively, because when it's not completed, the agency is out of compliance. And it's very rigorous with regards to hours that are completed and who completes them. So that should be really easy to track. If it's done at roll call, if there's 40 people in the room for roll call, they'll have every officer's name in that roll call that completes that training that day. So we won't have a problem with regards to the thousands of officers in the state knowing who took it and when. Publicly available, I can tell you, as someone who's been in Post for over 40 years, I don't know that any post-training's ever been publicly available, and I would imagine that some of it is. But I can tell you during my career, we were never able to go online and look at training online if you weren't enrolled in that course. So I don't know what the status is now because it's been some time since I've been in post-training. That's my personal experience. But how we can evaluate is a great question. And it's one of the things that I can at least speak for one large law enforcement agency. When we do consider training, the first thing we think about is how are we going to know if it's effective or not? So I think what will certainly happen is they'll be doing surveys of the officers that are completing that training. And then to not reinvent the wheel, they'll probably use metrics that have been done in other training platforms with regards to how they evaluate it, with regards to content, viability, quality. Is it changing the game? What I would love to see is that if officers take this training, we see periodic evaluations or audits of these officers in the field to see if it's being used, how it's being used, and if it's being effective. I can tell you that that's what we do with de-escalation and conflict resolution. And that's been quite effective when we go back to officers and say, did you use it? Yes, I did. Did it work? Yes, it did. Why did it work? What could we do better? So I think this is not a situation where we evaluate pre and post effectiveness. I think it's an ongoing system of evaluating and auditing to see if it's actually working and being used. But those are great questions. And I'm not the expert. I'm just giving you my personal experience with what I've seen in the past and how it probably will go forward. Hope that's helpful.
Thank you, Commissioner Suthers. Vice Chair Salcedo.
Yes, thank you so much, Chair Roybal. Let me once again begin by saying thank you so much, Commissioner Suthers and Commissioner Adamski, for all of your work on this issue. And we know that this is a complicated matter, right? And I do want to say that I certainly appreciate all the work that is happening around this. I do have to say, however, that I myself and many members of our community have been providing training to law enforcement here locally in Los Angeles specifically, right? And I'm talking about 25 years, right? And it's just it hasn't worked, right? It hasn't worked. And so for us as an organization, we don't call it capacity building, or we don't call it just the same things that they are in fashion, right? Like for people to like just understand what it is. The training that we do is culture transformation training, right? And so we understand that in order for people to be inclusive and accepting of transgender and non-conforming intersex people, right? Like we need to be able to transform the culture that we have within our society. And I believe that is the same with law enforcement. I certainly agree with Commissioner Sinar in terms of, having a video and just checking a box to say like, we've done this, right? That has not been effective, right? And so how do we find ways to really transform the culture? And I'm going to give an example of some of the things that we are doing as an organization. For instance, with our new employees, right? Like we are creating a robust packet for people to, before they actually start doing work in community, right? Like they have to go through a series of trainings that are evaluated, right? Like that we are making sure that they're actually ready, right, to engage with our community. And so perhaps that is something that could be integrated in law enforcement, right? I understand that there's academies and this and that leading people to that, but once people are hired, like what is the process that is taken in order for people to be able to actually engage with people, to be educated, particularly on hate crimes, hate incidents. We just had a listening session with the district attorney's office couple of weeks ago, and the same things keep coming and coming over and over again, right? Like law enforcement don't listen to what we have to say when it comes to trans people. We're blamed for whatever happens to us, that it happens to us because of who we are. The ignorance of law enforcement not understanding the difference between a hate crime and a hate incident, and also the inability to taking reports, right? And so like there's, again, I do know that this issue is super complicated, right? But I'm just thinking like, how do we actually work together, right, to transform the culture within law enforcement, like just shift this mentality that has been created, right? Like this sort of like military mentality, right? Like everybody else is the enemy but us, right? And so just I don't know, I just wanted to, I guess, for us to continue to I guess share ideas and continue to see how we can not just transform the culture for sure, but also how do we hold people accountable who continue to do the same thing, expecting to get different results, right? Because that is the definition of insanity, right? So again, thank you so much for the work. And just wanted to invite us all to continue to work together to hopefully find some type of solution to the issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair Salcedo. Let's go to Commissioner Sinar, and then we'll come back to you, Commissioner Suthers, and then I see you too, Commissioner Levin. Commissioner Sinar.
Thank you, and I appreciate Commissioner Suthers, your sharing that there are channels for tracking the video usage from Post. And maybe the only thing I would add to that is that if that kind of the expectation that we will, as a commission, receive that information on some regular basis, if that can be maybe worked out formally in an agreement with Post before everything is finalized, because otherwise I can see them perhaps retaining the information but not being committed to share that information back with the commission, and that's really important. And I think also AB 449 does include a requirement that agencies in their hate crime policies, report to the state on their schedule for hate crimes trainings. But I think if the past is any indication, many agencies, and again, we've got 700 different law enforcement agencies in California, they don't always comply with that. And so that's why I think building in these kind of redundant measures of getting that information from Post as well as from the agencies through that mechanism is important. And the only other thing that I wanted to quickly say is that I do want to go back to this point about Post generally not making its videos public and it being proprietary. And I guess that surprises me a little, just given the context that these are training videos meant to train law enforcement on these really important issues that have been the source of breakdown of community trust. And for all the reasons that Commissioner Salcedo just mentioned about many communities having this distrust of law enforcement, things like just being transparent about how we are educating police on responding to hate crimes seems significant. And I wasn't at the last commission meeting, but I listened to the part of the discussion about the video, and I think there were 3 community organizations mentioned that were taking part in the production process. I think one might have been Stop AAPI Hate, or maybe I had that wrong. But ARC of California, which is works on disability rights, and the ADL of Los Angeles. And there are many other organizations also in the state, particularly those working with Black and Brown communities, with the Sikh communities, with the Muslim and Arab communities, and so forth, that also have had experiences of distrust, the trans community, and so on. And it seems like if there are just 3 organizations in the room, I understand that not everyone can participate in the actual production process. I also am aware that our staff and commission members who are there will represent a much wider diversity of perspectives. But even with that, I think it may make a difference to broader community organizations and communities if they know that they can themselves see how we are training law enforcement.
Thank you, Commissioner Sinar. Commissioner Southers and Dansky, before I get to you, let's have Commissioner Levin weigh in, and then the two of you can respond to all of that, and we can wrap this part up. Commissioner Levin, you're on mute.
Thank you, and let me just start by congratulating you on your reelection. And importantly, before I go into the substance, I just want to take a second here. Do you see how civil and deep the discussions we have at these meetings? Notice what we can get done when we have a fidelity to research, to community, stakeholders, and answer to the people of California. I am so proud of every one of you. And by the way, I'm going to go off script and not just commissioners. Okay, let me go. That includes all who are participating and my friends from the Civil Rights Department who do far too much work and get far less credit. But three things. First thing, National Organization of Black Law Enforcement Executives back in the 80s looked at what departments had better responses. And what they found was a message from the top, which actually goes to what Commissioner Sinar had said. For instance, this study that we had showed this decline, cut in half when we had a hate crime law 2 years later in Boston. But there were multiple working parts. The other thing, though, that I wouldn't underestimate is structural. There was a lot of discussion about enforcing domestic violence. But what they found in Minneapolis and then spread to other cities was when you made it a requirement, a message from the top, from the chief saying, this is an important thing, not just 30 parkers, 10 movers, and 2 red lights. This is an important thing. And then it was structured in. There's a policy, in other words, so we have to deal with culture, structure, and lastly, knowledge. There are people who are well-meaning, but may not have any knowledge about things. So those are the 3 areas. And I just want to congratulate Vice Chair Salcedo, because these voices are so important. And I just want to say thank you to all my commissioners. I don't get to do this during the off time. And just to Commissioner Dansky, who's working so hard. She's like the plate spinner on the Sullivan Show. She's doing so many things. And I know you're working on so many municipal items and this and that. You are exactly the type of person that we want to round out this kind of thing. And I want to congratulate all the other commissioners, because it's this diversity of experience, opinion, and analysis that makes you the best of California. And I'm so thankful for because listen to the kind of rancor we have in Washington and in other places. We might diverge on things, but we seek evidence-based policies, and we conduct ourselves with civility and knowing. And I want to say this to Commissioner Sinar in particular, in knowing that one for all, Islamophobia, Arabophobia, and all that kind of other garbage, which I have been tracking, has no place in a civilized society. And I want to reach out to my friends who talk to me in the off hours. We hear you, and I want you to know that I stand against that. And to my Jewish colleagues, anti-Semitism has no place in a civil society. And I want to thank you for not only the structure of a commission that's diverse, but civility and good-heartedness, which makes us more than the sum of our parts. You are truly, and I just want to say this, we had someone, a Cal State grad, that was murdered in the terror attack, and she had a saying, and she said, beautiful people see beauty in all people. That's our commission, and I thank you all from the bottom of my heart.
Thank you, Commissioner Levin. Commissioner Southers, and then Commissioner Dansky.
Yes, thank you, Chair Robo, and I'll be very brief. Commissioner Sinar, I apologize for not knowing if those videos are public. I mean, I have not been to the Post website, so they could very well be, and I agree with you. If we're going to talk about transparency, they certainly should be. Vice Chair Salcedo, I agree with you. I'm a staunch advocate against video training. It's just my personal belief. I'm old school. I like to get people in the room. And to your other point, there has been traditionally, you're looking at a profession that's been us versus them, amplified by what happened in 2020. So it's a big challenge to change culture, if you will. And I think for that reason, I, like many of you, do things for certain motivations. I have been in law enforcement for 40 years because I was a victim of misconduct more too often than I wanted to be, and decided I can't change it from outside. And so I think, to your point about working together, there's a number of opportunities where organizations can work with those agencies. I mean, really work with them. I think the way to answer your question and to take on that challenge is those persons being subjected to the conduct of the officers that's being described should be describing the policies and the content for the training they receive. And that would be my first recommendation, is that officers should not be providing content or developing content for officers. And that's something that's happening in a lot of agencies. And I think it's the way to go. But great comment, and I think you're absolutely on point. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Suthers. Commissioner Damsky, and then we'll go to public comment.
Thank you. And thank you all the commissioners who provided input on this video that we've been working on all these months. I think it did not occur to us in our subcommittee to ask about what documentation Post has on the video trainings that they've done in the past, and how they evaluate those. So in our future meetings with Post, we will certainly bring those questions to the fore. Really appreciate those. To Commissioner Sinar's comment about the requirement of law enforcement agencies to report these to the state, that's supposed to start July 1st. However, that's one of the pieces that has not been funded yet. It's one of the things we're concerned about and keeping our eyes on. So we will share more information about that as that becomes available. Again, I really want to thank everyone for your input. This has been enormously useful. And I look forward to seeing where the video goes from here. Thanks so much. And I think I'll stay on for the public comments section for this, and then I need to return to my conference. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Commissioner Damsky. And again, thank you to the subcommittee and to you and to Commissioner Suthers for all this work. And I just want to remind the commissioners, this is not the last time we will talk about this training. The commissioners will be meeting with Post and will probably come back and give us more to talk about and to chew on. So this is not the last time we'll be having this conversation. And I wanted just to see if there are any public comments on this. I thought I saw a hand earlier, but it seems that it's not there anymore. Monica, is there any public comment?
No public comment that I see.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Damsky, for joining us. We know you had to run away from the conference you're attending. We appreciate you being here and taking the time. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Commissioner Suthers, you don't have any other report from the subcommittee, right? You're done.
No, Chair, our subcommittee report is completed. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. Let's move on to the subcommittee on policy recommendations and best practices in other jurisdictions. Commissioner Che.
Thank you, Chair Roybal, and good morning, everyone, again. I'd like to make our report on behalf of Commissioner Cuellar, who unfortunately is not able to join us today, and want to just use this opportunity to thank the staff members of the California Civil Rights Department. So Alec Watts, Monica Chavez, Rebecca Goodsell, and Shilpa Rams, who are a part of our committee. And I have two updates, and one that's connected to a request to the fellow commissioners. And first is just a brief update on our community-based research. As we reported in the past, we have engaged Halima Barucha, who is our consultant and who has begun the process of interviewing subject matter experts. Namely, for us, it's been CBOs, community-based organizations, many of whom are Stop the Hate and transformative grantees. And essentially our research questions is really focused on barriers. So barriers to reporting, seeking assistance. And again, these are grantees that are part of the Stop the Hate programming groups that have been funded to support victims and survivors, but also to do and engage in violence prevention work, to do education and outreach, using a multitude of strategies from mental health, using arts and culture, and in particular, working with some of the most vulnerable members of our community. So we're really excited that is well underway. And then secondly, this is a follow-up to the matter of how do we engage subject matter experts, essentially non-commission members. And just as a reminder, we are in fact advisors. We are an advisor body to the governor and to state agencies, including the California Civil Rights Department, who we work most closely with. And as part of that, our expertise is being tapped to help shape the work of the commission. And we currently have robust practices in place, including the community forums. I've named our community-based research with key informants. We also have our public comment opportunities at our full commission meetings. And just as a reminder that any member of the public has an opportunity to reach out to the commission staff at chs@calcivilrights.caa.gov. And any matter can be brought to the staff and will then be raised to the commission. And also, as a reminder, we want to make sure that subject matter experts, individuals, that we ensure meaningful participation and involvement. And so the specific request of all the subcommittee chairs and members is that if you could take time to identify how you would like to work with subject matter experts based on your current strategic priorities. And of course, it is something that we would like to hear in terms of your thinking. We'd also like to hear your thoughts about how you'd like to manage those relationships with subject matter experts, as we shouldn't rely on staff to do so, given their other responsibilities. And then just a recommendation that for management purposes that we limit to 5 or so. And so obviously, this is something that we would just love for the commissioners to discuss in your subcommittees, again, based on your current priorities. And if ready and possible, we'd like to just hear your thoughts at the following commission meeting. And that concludes my short report, and we'd be happy to entertain any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Commissioner Chase. I just want to reiterate what I heard from you. The request from you to the subcommittee chairs is in the subcommittees to have a conversation about the use of subject matter experts and to identify up to 5 folks who might qualify based upon the priorities of each of the subcommittees. And was that a good summary?
That was an excellent summary, Chair Rogal. Thank you.
And what I would like to ask is for CRD staff in your staffing of the committees to just make sure that that gets on the agendas of the subcommittees so that they can have those kind of conversations. And I assume, Commissioner Che, that we'll have this conversation and we'll schedule this for a future commission meeting to have this conversation and get feedback. But Deputy Director Watts, if the staff could, as folks are talking, to just keep track of that. If there's a central repository for that information to go, would be, helpful. Is that okay with you, Deputy Director Watts?
Yes, we can do that. Thank you. I think one thing to get clarification on, and this is a question for Commissioner Che. So in addition to identifying up to 5 people who might qualify, my understanding is that the subcommittee should also have conversations around how exactly they want to engage the non-member advisors and for how long. Is that right?
I think it's really, thank you for that question, Deputy Director Watts. I think the main gist of the conversation is to really have criteria and parameters in which you engage subject matter experts based on your current priorities. And so with that, there is an understanding that it's just really clear what you're seeking in terms of involvement and input. And again, it's within your already set or established scope of work and priorities. And it really does help to manage expectations. And then it's more of an internal conversation about how you hope to meaningfully engage.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Che. Commissioner Levin.
Hi, I just want to make sure that I'm on the same page. This is for the advisors that are set up within the legislation we're talking about. The non-commission advisors. This is not a separate subject matter expert entity. I just want to make
That
sure
is
that
correct, right? We're hoping that the committees, the subcommittees could just have a conversation about how you hope to engage subject matter experts. And it could also be that you don't have any intentions of doing that. But for those who've expressed a desire to do so, that's the recommendation that we're presenting before you, and we'd just love to hear your thoughts. Yeah.
Thank
may I
you.
just- may I just ask a quick follow-up on that?
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, may I ask a quick follow-up? I just want to make sure.
Yes, please.
Thank you, Chair. So for instance, one of the things that I thought would be a priority, particularly with what's happening now, people who are skilled from diverse interfaith communities, for instance. Another thing we had hoped when the commission was going to get started is that there would be someone from a human relations commission, however big or small. So not only representation, but bringing a particular skill set. That's does that sound like among the criteria you would say is what is in your scope? I just want to make sure that I'm following your directive.
Yeah, thank you for that question. This is a specific request pertaining to your subcommittee. And so that's the parameter in the request. However, I think there are other avenues. For example, we have our incredibly staffed and well thought out community forums. And so there can be, for example, a request to bring in different experts through that mechanism as well. I think what we're hoping is that we, each of the subcommittees discuss more thoroughly ways in which you hope to engage subject matter experts, people who have different experiences tied to the work that you've prioritized.
Would it be okay if we had one tranche that was directly related to subcommittee and another, because like, for instance, like, give me an example, no matter what city I'm in, and I mention Chair Royble's name, they know him. So there are certain people that even if you're not going to a criminology conference, but you run into folks and you know, oh, this person's good at a certain thing, or another person's good at something else, but not necessarily within the ambit of the subcommittee. If we could send 2 tranches, a small number, obviously, but along the lines of what I was saying, representation of diversity, representation of skill sets, for instance, someone from an organization that reaches out to undocumented people. that might not be directly within the research ambit, but at least tangentially to what our subcommittee does. So that's why something that's more specific to people who do data all the time versus someone that we think would be really good for the commission. Would that be okay if we had two tranches?
Well, Commissioner Levin, what I would say is that hopefully you have an understanding of each of the subcommittee's work and priorities. And so if you can think of individuals that can help support what each of the subcommittees have named, that would probably be a good path to go. And certainly if we did put out a call that if there were subject matter experts that we can engage, that we have a running list. But again, I think what we're trying to do is tie it to our current strategic priorities. And so, again, there are different mechanisms to get input, generally, and according to the issues that I think the commission has identified.
Commissioner Filer.
Just for my clarification, it seems like at the public forums, we are using, individuals with, particular expertise in subject matters related to what our goals are in the commission. Is that, am I thinking that we are doing a lot of that already? And it's
Absolutely. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
no, and just identifying more people that can be involved, let's say, in the public forums that we identify as being experts to bring in. Is that?
That's right, Commissioner. And just again, thank you, because that is where I believe we've had the most robust opportunity to engage with subject matter experts and people who have diverse experiences. So.
Okay, thank
That's
you.
right. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go to our next subcommittee, and then we'll take public comment, which is the Subcommittee on Community Forums. Commissioner Filer.
Great lead in. So I just wanted to briefly go over the next two public forums that we're working on. And I do want to thank, I know, unfortunately, Commissioner Cuellar could not be here, but really she's been the leader on these two public forums with her staff. So the next one we're going to have on March 20th, which will be after our commission meeting. That one's going to take place from 2 to 5. We have the Secretary of State that will be there. This one is to really talk about the surge of hate incidents and crimes around elections. And I think that Commissioner Levin can probably comment on this, but there is research that backs up that during an election time, we see an increase of hate incidents and crimes. And so the Secretary of State is going to talk about that. And also at this forum, we're going to talk about the barriers to getting people in rural communities out to vote, because that is a problem that happens as well. Then on May 11th, this is a Saturday, and again, we're aware with our forums that we need to kind of move the times and days in order to have to maximize the people who can attend. That one, and again, that'll be after our commission meeting, we're going to do up at Commissioner Cuellar's reservation at Shingle Springs Reservation. And that one will really be, that forum is going to be to understanding the our Native American communities, what they experience around hate, and to have the opportunity as commissioners to see that environment, which I think a lot of us are not as familiar with. So those are the next two forums we have. I think they're really going to be great and important. Any questions?
I don't see any questions. Thank you, Commissioner Filer. Excited about the next two forums. Just want to reiterate that the next one will be on March 20th, following the commission meeting, and the following one will be on Saturday, May 11th.
Right.
At the Shingle Springs Rancheria in just outside Sacramento and El Dorado County. And we'll send calendar invites and calendar holds to everyone so that you have that on your schedules. Thank you. Thanks, everyone. There's no subcommittee report on funding at this meeting, but let's go ahead and move to public comment. And I see that we do have one public comment, at least I can see in the chat, which is Greg DeJere. Greg, welcome. It's good to see you. Good to see your hand raised. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. This concerns the Public Policy Committee report. When the bill to create this commission was going through the legislature, the main points that Assemblyman Bloom made to sell it were that this would be a forum for the public to express their comments and their wishes, and for the carefully chosen members of the commission to make recommendations to the legislature and the other government bodies. But since he was speaking to legislators, he stressed recommendations to the legislature. The one that's very, very timely at the moment that I hope you'll choose to exercise both those responsibilities, to hear from the public and to perhaps take a position, is Assembly Bill 2604 in the legislature this year. It's been authored by Assemblymember Evan Lowe from Silicon Valley, and let me say a couple of things about him so that you'll get the idea that he's a very serious legislator and it's a very serious bill. He's the chair of the AAPI Legislative Caucus, which his missions specifically include promoting civil rights and hate crime prevention. He's the chair of the Assembly Select Committee on Equity, Inclusion, and Representation. He's a member of the LGBTQ Legislative Caucus. So this is someone who is quite sensitive to the community and is a leader and should be. We all should listen to his bill. I won't go into the content of it very much, except to say it addresses the problem of selective targeting of victims based on the 7 protected characteristics. And this is the problem that Commissioner Choi raised several meetings ago in relation to the Atlanta atrocities, the LGBT, pardon me, the AAPI community there, and the same sort of thing had happened in Santa Clara County, which is where Assemblyman Lowe is from, which has led him to introduce the bill. So I would very strongly advocate that because of the timeliness and that the commission take up the bill at the next meeting and invite the public to be heard, and I would hope would take a position of support. Of course, that would be up to the membership of the commission. Well, I think I've made the point. I would really hope that you would take that up because it's very timely and it's an opportunity, not only an opportunity, but I think a responsibility that the commission has to look at this very important bill.
Thank you, Greg. Looks like we have another public comment from Sean Gilbert. Welcome, Sean. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Wyball, and all of the commissioners today for this wonderful conversation. I appreciate comments and thorough thinking that many of you are doing, and especially on the discussion about police training and the Little Hoover report. I thank you, Commissioner Sinar, for mentioning that. I got that up on my computer so I can look at it. My question is, I live in the Contra Costa area, Contra Costa County, and recently one of the city council meetings of Walnut Creek experienced, and you may have seen this in the media, experienced a difficult meeting with a gentleman that spoke, I thought from the clip I saw, relatively civil, but what he was speaking was not so civil, and then concluded his conversation to the city council members with a Nazi salute. And it was very disturbing. One of the council members is a Jewish gentleman, and he called it out appropriately at the end when he was being interviewed. But my question to all of you, and I'm not sure which commissioner's work this falls under. It may be Commissioner Chow, but I'm not sure. What are we doing in our state to help local governmental bodies, whether it's school boards or city council meetings, who are experiencing an exorbitant number of incidences at these meetings? I know that there's been issues with the call-in with Zoom, and some local bodies have stopped taking public comments via Zoom. If you want to do public comment, you have to be attending in person. And actually, the meeting at Walnut Creek City Council was the gentleman that was talking. This was his issue that he was irritated about. I just wonder, what are we doing to collect data about these incidences, and what training local government officials that have been elected to be a part of these bodies are receiving? Is there communication between the commission, the California Commission on Hate, to these local governmental bodies to inform them that they have some way of reporting these incidences, some way of getting some training about how to handle such situations when they're happening? I know it's not easy when you're experiencing it. You almost become like a deer in headlights. But I'm wondering what the commission might be able to share about this kind of situation that's happening out in the greater community. And my last question is, I observe these meetings. I'm with the League of Women Voters Diablo Valley. Sometimes I speak as myself, as a member of the greater California community, and other times I question as a league member. But I think most of what I'm asking you is a little bit of both. But I want to know, how is the commission really letting our community across the state know that you exist? Because far too many people who I share, or when I submit my report of my observation of your meeting, people say, oh, I never even knew this existed. Now I know that you are a new commission.
Sean, your time is up. Could you wrap up your?
I just have 1 second. I just want to say, Director Becky Monroe has spoken to our community about the commission, but we need it to be broader. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean, for your public comment. I will just for both of the public comments, we will have that conversation about Assemblymember Lowe's bill with the staff. So the Deputy Director Watts, if you and I could connect about that, and then in terms of Sean, we did do it at the December Community Forum. We did do some research, and the recording is available online. I can't recall if you were at that community forum or not, about the incidents that are happening, particular in San Diego County. There is the University of San Diego is conducting a lot of research on impacts at school boards and other public bodies. One of the things that the commission has talked about is commissioning some research to go statewide. That is still in conversations with the folks who are collecting that data. So that's something I just want you to know that we are very aware of, and we are trying to get the word out more and more about the work of the commission, because we are new, and so that is something that we are attuned to as well. I want to now move to the Civil Rights Department report, Deputy Director Watts, and we also have a special guest.
Okay, thank you, Chair Roybal. And good morning, everyone, and thank you for the opportunity to provide an update on the Civil Rights Department. I will give 3 updates for you, and then I will turn things over to our special guest. The first update for you is pretty significant. In December of last year, CRD announced reaching an approximately $54 million settlement agreement to resolve allegations that Activision Blizzard discriminated against women at the company, including by denying promotion opportunities and paying them less than men for doing substantially similar work. Under the agreement, which is still subject to court approval, Activision Blizzard will take additional steps to help ensure fair pay and promotion practices at the company, as well as provide monetary relief to women who are employees or contract workers at the company in California. The settlement comes after 2 years of investigation and a lawsuit filed against Activision Blizzard in 2021 for alleged violations of California's Equal Pay Act and the Fair Employment and Housing Act. The second update for you is that also in December, we announced that we filed a lawsuit against Ralph's Grocery Company, also known as Ralph's, over alleged violations of California's Fair Chance Act, which resulted in the unlawful denial of employment opportunities to hundreds of applicants at the grocery store locations across Southern California. Just to give you a bit of context, I believe I've discussed the Fair Chance Act in previous updates, but just for some more context, this act aims to protect Californians against unlawful employment discrimination based on past involvement with the criminal legal system. So in the lawsuit, CRD alleges that Ralph's has ignored and continues to ignore the law's requirements, including by screening out otherwise qualified applicants on the basis of their criminal histories that do not have any adverse relationship with the duties of the job for which they were applying. For instance, information obtained by CRD in our investigation indicated that multiple candidates lost their job offers based on convictions for a single misdemeanor count of excessive noise. Other applicants who had convictions from other states for simple cannabis possession were also disqualified. Ralph's also failed to perform individualized assessment of applicants' criminal histories, providing inadequate notification about the grounds for the revocation of a conditional job offer, and unlawfully include questions in its job application form seeking the disclosure of an applicant's criminal history, which is a direct violation of the Fair Chance Act's requirements. The third update for you is that this month we announced that we opened the Pay Data Reporting Portal for the 2023 calendar year. I believe we've discussed this as well, but just so you know, under California law, private employers of 100 or more employees or workers hired through labor contractors are required to annually report pay, demographic, and other workforce data to the state. And what CRD does is it collects, aggregates, and analyzes this data and publishes the findings. You might recall that last year we released data for 2021, which covered approximately 7 million employees across California, and demonstrated that pay disparities remain a persistent problem in California, with women and communities of color concentrated in the state's lowest paid occupations. So along with opening the portal this year, CRD has also released updated reporting templates, FAQs, and user guides. I'll drop a link to additional information about California's pay data reporting process in the chat so everyone can read more about that if you'd like. And I'm just going to wrap up the update by introducing our special guest. So Assistant Deputy Director of Outreach and Education at CRD, Lily Harvey is with us today, and she has joined us to introduce a new program to prevent hate in businesses in California. So Lily, I'll pull up your slides, but feel free to get started.
Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Chair, Commissioners, and all. It's true, I am Lily Harvey, and I use she, her pronouns, and I'm really happy to be with you all today. I'm just going to provide a really brief update on some of the work that Outreach and Education is doing, having to do, as we've heard, to address harassment, discrimination, and hate in businesses. But before I do that, I did want to, just by way of general introduction, since I don't think I've been here before, just say a couple words about outreach and education at CRD and what our unit does more generally. So our unit was actually, we're still pretty new. We were born out of sort of in the wake of the Me Too movement in 2018. And we were initially conceived of as a group to put together a statewide sexual harassment prevention training, which we have in fact done, and it is available on our website and used widely throughout the state. But over time we have grown, and our goal now on a good day is to reach every Californian to inform them of their rights and obligations under California civil rights law. So no problem, we're on it. So we're very busy. We do a lot of stuff. We are the folks who are responsible for the materials, publications, interactive guides you might find on our website. We do all of our required posters, and we do a lot of in-person outreach, trainings, presentations, etc. You can reach us by request. We do take requests. We come and do trainings for folks throughout the state on a regular basis. So that's just a tiny bit about who we are. But today what I came to present on briefly is our Welcome In program. So this is the Business Recognition Pilot Program, codified at Cal Civil Code 51.17. And it is designed to help prevent discrimination, hate, and harassment in businesses, and to recognize businesses for creating sort of affirmatively safe spaces. So the couple things I wanted to share with you specifically, and I think it's on the next slide. So next slide, please. Is just that we are launching. That's the most exciting news I have to share. So hopefully in the next several months, we'll be rolling things out. Our goal is to launch before January 1st of next year. And a couple things I just wanted to highlight for you all today. One is that a big chunk of what we're going to be providing as part of this business recognition program are sort of different benchmarks businesses can meet to receive the certification. There will be certain requirements attached to get the certification. But one of the really exciting things I wanted to share with you is our How Can I Help You training, which is going to be free on our website, on our Welcome In program webpage coming soon, training that participating businesses and anyone can take that is a customer service bystander intervention training. It's about 30 minutes long. It's interactive. There's a not super ideal little image of one of the slides here in our draft version. But the idea is to have customer service representatives learn more about what hate and harassment in businesses look like, sort of feel seen and validated in the complicated sometimes and really important role they play in responding to incidents of hate and harassment in the business setting, and empower them to have more skills and a better understanding of what interventions may be available to them through their supervisors, through their businesses, through ongoing education, and through the basic principles of bystander intervention. So we're really excited to have that be rolling out soon. The rest of the program, we're still in the final throes, I hope, of program design. So I am happy to come back and share more when we have that finalized. But other things that I can mention, we'll have a model policy available that participating businesses can do a version of or adopt that will be included in the HR manuals or the employee manuals that'll talk through expectations and resources for folks, for employees. We're going to have a model code of conduct that will be posted in all of the business windows, sort of like a positive version of no shoes, no shirt, no service, except for an affirmative statement of harassment, discrimination, and hate-free expectations within the business. And there'll be other resources, trainings, et cetera, that will be rolling out, an UNRU training, things like that, that'll be part of the program as well. So I thank you. I know you all have lots of things to talk about, but I appreciate being able to share a little bit about the program and about our unit more generally. And I look forward to being able to provide more updates in the future.
Thank you, Deputy Director Watts and Deputy Director Harvey. Thank you for joining us today and sharing about this program. Are there any questions from commissioners to either Deputy Director Watts or Deputy Director Harvey? Vice Chair Salcedo?
Yes, thank you so much for this informative session or presentation. I do have a question. I know that this particular trainings and support is for consumers of business. Some of the things that people have brought up to us here is I guess they're public offices. For instance, people have come and report of how they have been denied access at Social Security offices to restrooms that go in line with their identity. And the security guards who work there obviously need capacity building and support. Anyways, that is a federal entity, right? But the companies that they hire to do security are private companies, so it's kind of like convoluted. And I'm wondering if this is something that maybe some of those places can, I guess, not just benefit, but I'm hoping like be mandated to do some of that stuff. But yeah, I'm just trying to sort of like figure it out. You know, private versus public. And also, I'm wondering if this will be helpful specifically to members of our community, because trans people oftentimes get discriminated like in a lot of places that they go into. So just wanted to see like if we can speak a little more on that. Thanks.
I think, Commissioner Che, I think this was part of your bill that your organization sponsored, right?
Yes, thank you so much for the report, and Commissioner Salcedo, thank you for your question. We are really proud that this was a bill that we sponsored as part of Stop API Hate. And it was because of our data that members of the community were being harassed in public spaces, including private businesses. And so this bill is really intended for those spaces and to really develop partnerships with private businesses. This is really for larger retail operations that really wanted resources and also took into consideration the safety and security of employees as well. And so it's about connecting customers, training employees, and again, it's more of a proactive, affirmative program. I think what you're raising, Commissioner Salcedo, is egregious. Unfortunately, this bill does not address that matter, and I wonder if other staff members can address Commissioner Salcedo's question, because we do have laws with regard to public accommodations. Yeah.
And I think to me it's like, okay, it's a federal entity, and I'm just, those are the reports that we have gotten through Social Security offices, for instance, right? So it's a federal entity, but they're in state space, but it's just, I think it's just convoluted, but maybe some guidance would be great.
Deputy Director Watts, can you address that?
Yeah, I've just been thinking about it and thinking about how to approach it. As you mentioned, Bambi, it's a very challenging issue, and I'm trying to think of where CRD comes in and how we can help. So I'll just look into it for you and see if there's something we can do. Hopefully there is, but that's such a good point, and I appreciate you raising it.
Yeah, I'm thinking, I don't know, at least to consumers, maybe like know your rights or something, like what can possibly people do? Sorry, Ms. Harvey.
Deputy Director Harvey.
Thank you. And I appreciate also you bringing this this really important issue up, Commissioner. I am happy to, I can connect with Mr. Watts as well to provide some resources and send them over. But as you mentioned, there are California laws that do impact this, right? There's the state entities, there's places of business, there's a bunch of different ways. And I agree that it is often the intersection that makes it really tricky to figure out what's covered, which, where, by what law and why. But there is some information that we have available on our website that speaks to this. And there are also trainings that are required, like, for example, the sexual harassment prevention training, which I mentioned, which does cover sexual harassment prevention, but is also, we just did a revision of it this year. It also just covers creating workplaces and cultures of respect more broadly. And that includes talking about California laws beyond just the requirement of the sexual harassment prevention training. So I do think there's some resources that are really helpful to kind of demystify and unpack the, who would I complain to, what would I say features of the spaces that people are on when we know that there are protections, but it's a little bit tricky to understand what they are. So I'm happy to connect and to provide some of these materials to the commission staff and make sure that those are sent over and perhaps help facilitate ongoing conversation on this important topic.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Of course.
Thank you, Deputy Director Harvey, and thank you for joining us today. We have a couple of more items on the agenda, but I just wanted to check with the commissioners to see if folks need a break before we wrap up, because we have been going for almost 2 hours. Do folks need a break? Okay, let's take a 5-minute break. We'll reconvene at 10:58.
Thank you.
Okay, welcome back, everyone. Just have a couple more items on the agenda. Let's move to commission member announcements. I won't call on each of you, but if you have an announcement, please feel free to use the raise hand button and I will call on you. Vice Chair Salcedo.
Thanks so much, Roybal, Chair Roybal. Appreciate the opportunity to announce that this is not necessarily related to this commission, but I'm happy to announce that our organization turned 15 this year. We launched, so we're celebrating our quinceañera. We are going to be having an amazing event in November in which you are all invited. So stay tuned. There's going to be different things that we're going to be doing. But one of the things that we are doing, as you may know, we were lucky enough to pass Assembly Bill 2218 and which is a Trans Wellness and Equity Fund, and the governor allocated $13 million to support trans-led work. So we are also in the process of doing that here in the county and the city of Los Angeles. So any support that you can provide to ensure that the livelihood of transgender non-conforming sex people are uplifted, supported and valued through service provision, and really to support trans leadership and other trans-led organizations would be great. So please stay tuned, follow us up on social media so you can get notifications and all of that. So just wanted to make those two announcements, and thank you so much for the opportunity to address y'all.
Thank you, Vice Chair Salcedo. I, having been in a number of quinceañeras over my lifetime, I cannot wait to participate in yours.
Well, it's going to be fabulous.
Well, I'm going to get my dressmaker going so I can show up dressed to the nines.
Please do.
Commissioner Levin.
And I want you to know we all color coordinate our shirts. Anyway, a few things because I think it's so important that the accomplishments of my colleagues in civility is key to getting things done. Congratulations to you, Chair Roybal, but we're not done. We got the quinceañera out on Trans Latino. Congratulations to you. Wait, we're not done. Errol Southers, who did not, as internet rumors suggested, repel down to get his Webb Award. I want to congratulate, because you were an FBI SWAT. That's why. He used to be an FBI SWAT. Anyway, for those of you who don't know what repelling is, look it up under YouTube. It's, anyway. And I wanted to congratulate you on this award. Couple of things. You're going to have to get new shelving in the house. So long, Lowe's and Home Depot. And and just what a wonderful achievement from your colleagues. All kidding aside, what a wonderful achievement this Webb Award which you received. If I was in town, I was out of town, I apologize. I would have gladly have attended, but we're not done. I wanted to thank my friends at Stop AAPI Hate for doing some wonderful including one related to safety in mass transit. So congratulations on that, as well as your indefatigable efforts to protect the civil liberties of non-residents. This is a really big deal. We don't have a lot of time to go into it now, but just as as I've been saying publicly, we stand with you on this. We've been through this before, and we have to stand together. But I'm not done. I wanted to thank all the folks at the Civil Rights Department. I can't thank them all by name because then we'd go too long, but you know who you are, and especially those that are going not only helping the commission, but the hard workers who are going throughout the state to help people. They pack their go bags and they go. Thank you, Civil Rights Department. And you know what? I watch on some of these news stations how California's falling off the earth and all this stuff. Guess what? We invest in protecting all communities and making sure the civil liberties of all in the state are protected. You get what you pay for. And lastly, JFED, which did some fora relating to discrimination and anti-Semitism against students, as well as other fora. So what I wanted to just get across in these announcements is the wonderful diversity of talent. And I want to say to all these folks, if you ever need an ally at any of these things, and Bambi, Commissioner Salceda, thank you so much for your invites. And lastly, some announcements to people who were very nice to me. I want to thank the LA Human Relations Commission for inviting me to speak, and thank you, Salam from MPAC, Salam Al-Mariati. I want you to know we stand with faith communities, because part of what this state is about is protecting freedom of faith or freedom not to be of faith. It's key to a civilized democracy. You see how we run things civilly. And additionally, I do think it's important at a difficult time for Jewish people, as well as Muslim people. My tribe is the tribe of protecting people of goodwill across all faiths. And I want you to know, when I go out to these engagements, whether it's MPAC or JFED or whoever else, I listen, and I want you to know this commission is a beautiful thing, and it's filled by people who care. And as President Washington said in his letter to the Thoreau Synagogue about the children of the stock of Abraham and living in peace and safety under their fig trees, that's what America is about. And to those ne'er-do-well Luddite bigots who think they can hijack our civil liberties, yeah, you have the right to say what you like, irrespective of viewpoint. But we have the right to use our First Amendment too, as individuals, as I'm doing now. I'm not speaking on behalf of the commission, but I'm sure in some way they relate. We give to bigotry no sanction, to prejudice no existence. So with that respect, want to thank LA Human Relations Commission. Also want to thank Mary Scott Knowles, who had me again speak at her wonderful Fair Housing Conference. You are such an important person for making sure that fair housing exists in California and the nation. And I wanted to give a shout out to you. Also to the Religion News Agency. If I can get out there, I will gladly speak. But to the extent that you see all this wonderful stuff going on, please, fellow commissioners, or if you know people who are in communities that are impacted by prejudice, and there's a way that I can show up as an ally, please contact me. If my caretaking schedule allows, I will go on my own dime anywhere in the state to show this allyship, and that includes my dear friends on this commission. And I think what we've shown here is we can address important issues from different perspectives and have evidence-based and diverse skill sets and representation. It's the finest of America. And I want to thank every one of the commissioners, but also, if I may, the folks at CRD who you don't see, who work so hard. So I know there's a lot of impatience about why don't we do this with regard to legislation or what's going on with data. We are setting up a foundation for a house that I hope will be permanent. But I want to make sure that you know that these commissioners are doing this on their own and doing this on their own sacrifice. They're not getting paid extra or anything like that. And on behalf of the people that I run into going to these various fora, I want to thank every single one of you commissioners. I want you to know how valuable your presence is to people, particularly people who are vulnerable. So just the hard work that you do we are so appreciative. And Chair, thank you so much for setting a tone of professionalism and civility. Thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for these announcements.
Thank you, Commissioner Levin. Let's move on to the public comment on items not on the agenda. Monica, are there any public comments?
No public comment.
Seeing no public comment, as always, if you want to calendar future agenda items, please email me and Deputy Director Watts to put those in the queue for consideration for a future meeting. A reminder that our meeting next month, just like this month, is a week earlier than we usually meet. So it's going to be on March 20th, followed by the community forum, which I'm very excited that Dr. Shirley Weber will be joining us for that community forum. Not only is Dr. Weber our Secretary of State, but was also one of my college professors. So, so I am very excited that she's going to be joining us for our community forum on March.
Proud Cal State graduate. We are so proud of you, San Diego State.
That's right.
And by the way, Dr. Suthers, before the mayor of LA went to USC, she was a proud Cal State grad as well. I apologize for that terrible interruption.
So thank you, everyone, for your good conversation and substantive comments today. And of course, for all your work on behalf of the commission and the people of the state of California. It is an honor to get to work alongside you on this important work for our state and for the people of our state. With that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move, and thank you so much for your leadership, Chair Roybal.
Thank you, Vice Chair Slato. You have a motion to adjourn, seconded by Commissioner Che. I saw Commissioner Che's hand too. So we are now adjourned at 11:10 a.m.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Great to